the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980, which we are doing now. Forgot to hit a button. First segment, not on the stream. Anyway, if you're joining us now on the stream, you can always check out the audio on the free Odyssey app. That always ready to go for you right at 4 o'clock. All right, coming up later in the show, we'll have more on the LIV Golf PGA merger with a national security expert, Alex Ward from Politico, who is also a huge sports fan, super locked into all of this stuff from every angle, is going to join us for Not My Beat at 5 o'clock. Anthony, are we confirmed with Standig for 5:30?
He has not necessarily confirmed, but I do have some contingency
Not
plans.
necessarily confirmed. That's a no.
That is a no.
All right. I'm curious. Contingency plans. What's a contingency plan?
I'm thinking of some other people.
Okay.
In mind. I was going to converse with you at 4:30.
Okay.
With
Yeah, we should probably not have this conversation fully on the air, but yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
You got a contingency plan. That's good. Okay, well, hopefully we'll have Standig. Often Standig is a late texter on a day where he's writing, so he comes up and he grabs his phone and he's like, yes, I will come on the radio. So hopefully that's the case. If not, we'll see what Anthony's contingency plans are coming up at 5:30. Right now, though, Chase Young spoke today for the first time of his off-season. He's fairly short in his comments. Not a man of many words, but got a couple of question and answers here. First, I don't know how this was the first question he was asked, but he's got kind of his mind. I don't say made up, but got kind of a focus. He hears the people criticizing him, and like any young athlete will, he just wants to prove his haters wrong.
I mean, since I came in the game, I was in the game to prove myself. So I'm not really thinking any different going out there and playing my game.
I just don't get why it's so hard for guys to be like, yeah, I'm here to help the team win. I'm here to prove myself. Like, you're an NFL player. You've proven it. We got it. It's not about you. It's about everybody. You have a part to play, but it's just, hey, man, like, you're part. Sure, whatever. I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. Is the declined fifth-year option motivation for Chase Young?
Yeah, but I can use a lot of things as motivation. So all of them, they stuck in my back pocket.
Okay, I didn't know football pants had pockets. This one hopefully is a little more insightful. When did he finally start to feel like himself again with the injury?
I feel like myself today.
But like during your recovery, at what point did it?
You just you don't really know until you get on the field. So I feel good today.
Okay, that's encouraging. We seem to be on a good path. Imagine if he had been there last week and been able to be on a football field. On what makes an elite pass rusher?
I would say your burst. I feel like that's what separates. Right when you beat your man, that burst, that finish, that burst is the quarterback. We just got to work on getting off our man and finishing, bursting.
Okay. I'm not going to read too much into that answer. And how important it is for him to be out there with his teammates.
It feel good, man. I think my teammates know when I come on the field, I'm going to bring the juice, something I've always done. So I'm just being me.
Anthony, what am I supposed to do here? How do I not overreact to this, but also say that those are 5 of the lamest answers I've ever heard in my life?
I mean, the thing is, I don't think Chase has always been lengthy in his responses. That was me being devil's advocate, but
not a good interview. Not his strength.
I think
which is fine, by the way.
I think considering the fact that, he did miss the first 2 weeks of voluntary OTAs, I think he should have known that the media would have wanted more. But I guess he doesn't really care what anyone, thinks and feels, to be honest.
Bingo. And I'm trying not to be an old man yelling at a cloud here. I'm trying to do this in a way that there is a perspective on what we're talking about here, which is Chase had to do media. He doesn't want to do it. He's not particularly insightful. But his default setting is Chase Young, not team winning. It's like, it's all Chase. And again, if he goes out and produces, that's fine. It becomes funny. It becomes a Randy Moss-esque, like, comedy show. There's many a diva wide receivers. There's been many a diva pass rushers over the years who are very into their own storyline and being the main character. I'm trying to be so careful here because I do not, again, this is not that big of a deal. I guess what I would say is this. It's not that big of a deal. It would just make everything so much easier and so much simpler. And I think it would be better for him if he looked at a more global team view and had a less me-centric view. Like, you are not the main character at all times. Does that make sense? Is that fair? Is that not going too far?
The math is mathing.
The math is mathing. Because I think of how other players would answer similar questions, and I just don't think it's a lot of me stuff. And I think it is a small insight into how he is wired, how he has made a lot of decisions over the last couple of years, and why there are many, and this is the part that matters. And this is not me putting anything on Chase. This is just a fact. There are a lot of people in the building in Ashburn who are very much over him. Now, they'll get back on board if he's awesome, but I think they would tell you he would be more likely to be awesome if he had less of a me-centric view of his football world. I think I danced well enough around that. If not, I at least showed an intent to, so that only the most diehard of Chase lovers will be mad at me, which is something. You want to know what's probably better than that?
Take a man.
Yeah, probably. Coming up next, fun segment we did on Take Command. Well, Nick's Numbers, our producer on Take Command, is a guy named Nick Berlansky. And we have Nick play the book. Logan and I take over-unders. And we did the defense. We did Chase sacks. We did Montez sacks. We did Jamin Davis tackles. We did Emmanuel Forbes interceptions. Over, under, Nick's Numbers. Very fun. Less dancing around trying to have nuance. Next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@theteam980. Take command Tuesday time. Yes, somehow it is still only Tuesday. And on this most recent episode, we did another edition of Nick's Numbers. Our producer, Nick Berlansky, provided us with a bunch of numbers. We went over or under, and these were all focused on the defense, including a sack total for Chase Young. What did we say? Well, we can let you find out right about now. All right, so Nick is here for another episode of Nick's Numbers, where we come up with, because we're too early on the sports books, although I'm sure you can bet them somewhere. But you are, Nick is our resident bookmaker. He has come up with numbers. Some of them are based off of last year. Some of those are kind of based off of other guys in the league. I don't know the magic. I just know that this man has his numbers, and then we're going to give over or under. We did offensive skill guys last week, so we got defensive players this week. Nick, take it from here, sir.
I want to start on the defense by talking about the guy that led the Commanders in tackles last year on defense, and that's Jamin Davis. He had 104 tackles in the 2022 season. So my question to you guys, will Jamin Davis finish with over or under 100 tackles this season?
That seems easy.
This is an easy one. I take this one. You go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, guys in the NFL, 150, 160, 180 tackles for the guys that lead the league. I have to double check. There might even be something higher than that. As long as he's healthy.
I think Foye Olakun led with 184 last year.
Yeah, so like if he's healthy, that's really what we're asking here. I mean, I know he missed some time last year. He obviously, his role was a little bit different throughout the year, but once he kind of got into that Mike linebacker role, I mean, he's all over the place. If this defensive line is healthy in front of him, he should be pretty clean to the ball. That's an easy one. Like, I would say, not to take your job, Nick, but like
Hey.
145, 150 is a more interesting number.
There you go.
I think so too.
But over 100, yeah, done.
I think over 100 for sure, just because I think, but I will say it's important to note that schematically, this defense is kind of designed for the defensive line to make tackles. So he does have to take on a lot of blocks. So I still think, just based on how he played the last, 3 or 4 games of last season, where he's grading in like that 74 range on PFF, he's much more demonstrative to the football, much more instinctive, making some really, really nice football plays. I think if he can build on that, I think you're talking about like a guy in the top 15 of tackles maybe in the NFL. Like I think, again, he's very, very talented. He's got to stay healthy. You know, he's got a surgery that he's nursing right now. He had a surgery last year during the bye week. So it depends on if he's healthy, but I do think the table is kind of set if he can continue to grow. And I think we also got to talk about his role in the defense. Like if he's the Mike, he'll be on the field. But if it's like, you know, Cam Curl is your big nickel, and then Cody Barton's the guy that comes in those nickel situations, like he's not going to be on the field that much, because this team tends to lend itself to more nickel situations. So I still think 100 is low, but there are some situations where he's not on the field a ton. He doesn't develop the way we think, where he's under that number. But I just think, based on the last 4 games, he's in a better spot.
Well, that was the thing, is last year he was not on the field for a lot of situations. Cole Holcomb, though, had 69 tackles in just 7 games, and he's like, that's the role. Ironically, Logan, you know who was 15th in the NFL in tackles last year?
I have no idea.
136. Cody Barton.
Oh, our guy. Look, here he is.
So there you go. Barton, they could easily have 200 tackle guys this year.
Yeah, and it just depends on his role. It's hard to know right now because OTAs haven't, you know, like he's not been here. He's not been practicing. But like, I guess there is a world where he's the will linebacker and he's not on the field in nickel situations, which would be weird, I think, but it's a possibility.
Yeah. So over for both of us.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's talk about the defensive line that you mentioned. Daron Payne led all Commanders in sacks last season with 11.5. Will Payne finish this season with over or under 12 sacks this season?
Go ahead, Logan. Go ahead and tell them why it's under.
I'm going to say under, and it's just, you know, because sacks are there's so much variance in that statistic. Like his pressure rate's pretty good, but his pressure rate this last year was exactly the same as it was the year before and the year before that. So he might have been on the field for more reps, but in terms of his win percentage, it's the same. And so when I look at that number, I say to myself, that's just statistical variance. That's just him getting home 3 more times than he did last year or the year before. You know what I'm saying? So I think it'll come down a little bit just because it's hard to get sacks. Like we'll talk about this in a minute with Montez, but I watched all of his hits last year. He had 24 hits. He was 4th in the NFL. And it's tenths of a second difference between a sack and a incomplete pass. And so I think he'll probably get 4 or 5 more of those this year. He'll probably be in that 7 to 9 range. And everyone's gonna be like, oh, it's a down year for Payne, but really everything is exactly the same for him. It's just the statistical variance of the sack statistic.
Yeah, I think it's going to be under for the same reasons Logan said, but I do think it's going to be interesting if Chase is back and healthy, right? Because if you've got to pick where you double team, right, between Allen, Payne, Young, Sweat, is Payne the guy you still let go? Like, do you say like, all right, he's the one-on-one guy? Is it Allen? Is it Sweat? Like, you can only double team so many guys, and so someone's going to have one-on-ones, and that was kind of what happened with Daron last year. Is a lot of times they'd pick John, they'd pick Montez, and Daron would have to win one-on-one, and then he did. And if that happened, or if that happens, then you know you're still probably looking at a lot of those similar number of chances, and can he convert again? And it could push that 10-11 number again. I think the likelihood that he hits that is small. Because again, like, yeah, it's this. I get what you're saying, Logan, in terms of it's the same as the years before, but if it's the same, then he could do the exact same thing again.
Yeah.
So I would just say it's more likely, based off the statistical probabilities, if you will, that it comes in a little bit less. And I think after the season that he had, some teams are going to choose to put a little bit more attention on him too. So it's going to be interesting. But I think all across, they're probably going to all put up pretty decent numbers, but I don't know that anyone's going to have monster numbers.
And this is the thing, I just thought about this. So assuming that the offense is better, which I think based on our last podcast, we both think it will be, they'll be playing with the lead a little bit more, right? And then
That's
there's this great secondary that they've kind of accumulated, and we've talked about how Forbes has developed through OTAs. We've talked about how Quan has developed in OTAs, right? And maybe some of those ones where the quarterback gets the ball out a little early, the quarterback's got to hold it for a beat. And so maybe there are just more opportunities for them to A, rush, and B, the quarterback's going to hold the ball more because the coverage is going to be tighter. So, I think maybe I think he's going to be under still, but I think like there is a world where you have, 4 guys with close to 10 sacks, and I think that would be pretty cool. And that's all if the offense can support the defense by playing with a lead, and if the secondary can support the defensive line. I think there's definitely a possibility that happens, but I still think under for this.
Yeah.
Well, there's one defensive lineman that hasn't quite reached double digits yet, and that is Montez Sweat. You guys both mentioned him in that last answer. He's finished his first 4 seasons in the NFL with 7, 9, 5, and 8 sacks, respectively. So is this finally the year? Over or under 9.5 sacks for Montez Sweat?
You want me to go first? Yeah, I got it. So I'm going to say over. And again, I literally spent all day yesterday watching his hurries, his hits, his pressures. And I'm like, he just like his hits. So again, I would go back to the statistic. He was the 4th guy in the NFL in hits, quarterback hits. And quarterback hits aren't like, oh, I beat my guy, but I'm like 2 yards away and the ball's out. It's like I am hitting the quarterback as the ball is leaving his hand. Like if he held the ball even a beat longer, it's a sack. So I just look at that and I say to myself, like, if he has a comparable year to last year, but converts on 3 of those, 4 of those, like he'll have 12 sacks. And it's just how close he was so many times over the course of the year. And we mentioned the coverage, we mentioned the offense. I just think he's going to have more rush opportunities. Who do you double team? If Chase is playing at a high level, like I just feel like the opportunities are going to be there for him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that I will also go over. Del Rio talked about it last week. Like finished plays make money, and in the money making year, then I think Montez will figure it out. And it's not just that it's okay. It's time to make money. Last year, he wasn't motivated. Like it's year 4. We saw what happened to Ram. We saw what happened with John in year 4. Like you just are a more experienced player, and if you have to get 0.5% better. One, all the external factors, Chase's presence, the improved secondary, more rush opportunities, all those types of things that you mentioned. Also, just his own improvement. If he got 0.5% better this offseason, considering how close he was last year, that could be 3 sacks. Yeah. So I think that over on 10 for Montez is not a safe bet, but a good bet.
Yeah, I feel good about it too. I mean, again, there's no way to know for sure, but that one feels like he's due,
Yeah.
I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk a little bit more about the secondary, because Derek Forrest led the Commanders in interceptions last season. He had 4. I want to ask you guys, will Forrest finish with over or under 3.5 picks in 2023, with the new names also going to the secondary for the Commanders?
That's a tough one. That's a good one.
That's a good number. I'm not betting that one.
The tackle one was tough. The tackle one was tough, Nick, and this one is right on. We gonna take it, Craig?
Yeah, I'll take a stab. I'll go over. I do think there's just a general emphasis on creating turnovers and better personnel in doing it this year. And I think that, you add a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, who is not only going to intercept some balls, but is going to tip, a lot of balls. You have some of the other guys around, Cody Barton, a little bit more speed. Obviously he was productive last year in Seattle. Can he get his hands on a ball that falls back to Derek Forrest? I just think there are going to be more opportunities. You talk about, Logan, the offense being better. Perhaps they're playing with the lead a little bit more. You think of the first pick that Forrest had last year. It was the only turnover they had for what felt like 4 or 5 weeks at the beginning of last season was on Trevor Lawrence forcing a ball late at the end of the Jacksonville game in week 1. So I don't think it's much over. I think Forbes does lead the team in interceptions. I don't know if that's going to make an appearance in your numbers somewhere, Nick. But I will take at 3.5. I will go over.
Yeah, I don't like betting turnovers, just period. Just because I think there's a lot of variance there too, and we don't really know his role right now. Like I think there's a strong push to get Percy on the field more. Does that compromise his ability to get turnovers, especially if Cam's healthy? Like I don't know. So. I would say under, just because I think there's a lot of variance to turnovers, and I'm not sure he's going to be on the field as much as he was last year. I think he's going to play well. He's going to be good, but I don't think he's going to get 3 interceptions.
All right, there we go.
Fair enough. One of those extra names or added names that have come in this offseason is Emmanuel Forbes. Last season, the Seahawks rookie cornerback Tariq Woolen tied for the league lead in interceptions with 6. Will Emmanuel Forbes finish with over or under 5.5 picks in his rookie season?
Over.
You want to say yes so bad. You want to say yes so bad.
I just did say yes. I said over. I wouldn't say I didn't hesitate, but I hesitated slightly. But I'm gonna go for it. I just think that there is a natural skill set there that I'm not saying he's gonna be awesome in terms of he might get beat on some double moves. Like there could be some times like he gets sunned because like an AJ Brown is a massive, massive human being, and Emmanuel Forbes is not. But there is a ball hawk ability that he has that is not just like a man-to-man. He's hard to beat. He's handsy, all that kind of stuff. But he has an understanding in zone coverage that's really high level, and he hasn't even played a game yet. You see it on the practice field. If you watch you're welcome, Commanders, for the plug, but you watch the Commanders Log YouTube show, the behind-the-scenes stuff with him at the combine and his interviews and all that kind of stuff, the coaches were blown away at his intelligence. And so I think that stuff matters a lot when it comes to creating turnovers. Can you be in the right place at the right time? Can you bait quarterbacks? I think he's got all of that. And I also think teams are going to try to test him. They're going to be like, it's the skinny rookie kid. Like, let's go after him. I think the opportunities will be there. I'm going to go over. I'm not going to say he's going to have like 10, but 6, I'll go for 6. That's the number I would have put in my head. So I'm going to go over.
What's the rookie record for interceptions? Do we have that floating around someplace?
Didn't Diggs do something crazy a couple years ago?
Was it 10?
Look it up.
Yeah. So while you're looking that up, I'll talk about it. Again,
it's funny, by the way. You Google it and it gives you Peyton Manning's rookie record. 28 throws.
So I'll say this: I think he's very talented. I think he's very skilled. I just think it's hard. It's hard to get that many picks. Like, you're going to get your hands on a lot of footballs, but you're going to drop a whole bunch. Like even in OTAs so far, he hasn't had an interception yet. He's had a whole bunch of PBUs and great plays on the football, but like it's hard. And I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe the offense is playing better. They're playing with the lead. He gets more touches on the ball. I just think that's a ton of interceptions. I don't think I've played with anybody who's had even close to that many interceptions. I think D-Hall had 5 one year, which was pretty crazy. So I'm going to say under.
Well, D-Hall once had 4 in one game, so.
He did it was the Bears. I was on that team. Yeah. That was a crazy game.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say under. I think he's going to have a great year. I think he's going to kind of be everything you want in your first round pick. But I'm going to say under 5.
By the way, the rookie record 14.
Whoa!
Night Train Lane in 1952.
That's crazy.
Dan Sandifer had 12. Paul Krause had Dan Sandifer had 13. Paul Krause had 12. So that's those two were both Washington players. Everson Walls, the Hall of Famer, had 11 for Dallas back in the day. A lot of these are like pre-1990. Anthony Henry has the most in the 2000s. He had 10 for the Browns in 2001. Jarius Byrd had 9 for Buffalo in 2009. And then Marcus Peters had 8 in 2015 for Kansas City. Those are kind of the modern guys. Yeah.
There's a precedent for a lot of interceptions, I guess, by rookie players. But a lot of gambling with those players you just mentioned, I will say. A lot of guys who take a lot of risk. A lot of guys give up big plays.
Famously, Night Train Lane. I know you've done a lot of film study on him.
No, I'm talking about Marcus Peters and Bird and those guys. Night Train Lane's a little outside of my my area of expertise. I don't think they even have film for him anymore.
I know.
Only the
actual we can find
tapes.
Out. Call up NFL Films. See what they got.
Yeah, see what they got. Dude,
hey, Jaws, you got any Night Train Lane film?
Like what they were able to do back then to receivers was crazy. Like, just basically tackle them at the line of scrimmage, and it was like totally fine. So,
all right, Nick, let's go one more.
One more? All right, let's finish it off with Chase Young then, because he burst into the NFL with 7.5 sacks in his rookie season, but has only had 1.5 sacks in the 12 games he's played since then. Will Young finish with over or under 7.5 in 2023?
Logan.
I'm going to say over. I just think he's going to be on the field a bunch. He's going to be on the field a lot. So he's going to end up with maybe 8 or 9, I hope. I think he's going to be hopefully a more disciplined rusher. I think we're going to know very quickly whether he's improved his discipline as a pass rusher. I think he needs to learn how to rush with the group a little bit more, which is something that's going to be really interesting to watch, especially during this minicamp period, if that's kind of developed even a little bit. But yeah, I think I'm going to go over just because I think he's trying to get paid, and people who want to get paid do crazy things. And I think he's going to have a nice, big, improved year. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that number feels safe to go over as long as he stays healthy. He's going to be on the field a bunch and on a good defense with a lot of other good players, and he is super talented. So if he can, like Logan said, just do the things that he's supposed to do, he should get that number. If he tries to do a bunch of crazy stuff, they're going to take him off the field, especially because he's an expiring. It's not like, hey man, we're trying to develop you for the future. We're trying to win football games right now. And James Smith-Williams and Casey Tuhill do what they're supposed to do. So he's got to stay disciplined or he's not going to play. But assuming that he does that, I think he'll hit that number. I think he'll get over 7.5.
And again, that's given his recent history, that's a big assumption, but I agree. I think it's there. So,
yeah. All right, Nick, another excellent job. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app. You can listen to the Team 980 on your smart speaker. Just say play the Team 980.
Hey, it's Michael Jenkins with the Sports Betting Minute brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. Time to make some money on the diamond with a team that's hitting the baseball better than anyone right now. The boys down at Globe Life Stadium in Arlington welcoming St. Louis tonight, and this is really about those scorching hot Texas bats. Texas is the top hitting team in baseball, and that includes being number 1 in the majors at home as well. Meanwhile, St. Louis has only 3 wins in its last 10 games, while Texas has the second best winning percentage in the majors and is also the top team in the first 5. So it's a Texas two-step. Play Texas on the first 5 or Texas on the full game money line. That's it for this Sports Betting Minute brought to you by BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app and take your game to the next level with the king of sportsbooks.
BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older. Virginia and Washington, D.C. only. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing. Together millions of things for our planet. Cut up 6-pack rings and reduce your use of plastic to keep it out of waterways and oceans. When we each share our one thing, it becomes a million things for our planet. What's your one thing?
The classic Kentucky Fried Chicken Sandwich. Crispy chicken, 100% white meat with crunchy pickles and mayo. It might just be the best KFC chicken sandwich.
Oh, don't forget KFC Spicy Chicken Sandwich. It brings the heat.
Also very good.
Topped with a kick of spicy mayo, it might just be the best.
One of the best?
Okay, one of the best KFC chicken sandwiches out there.
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
Choose your flavor with KFC's Chicken Sandwich in classic
or spicy.
That's finger licking good. Price of participation may vary.
was almost a full year ago that happened. The inaugural Hoffman show. Coming up on a year, June 30th, and I'm going to celebrate by not being here. Oh, well. This is the Hoffman Show, 4 to 7 each and every day here on the Team 980 at 5 o'clock to start off hour 2. We talk to an expert on the day's biggest story, and today that is about the merger of LIV Golf and the PGA Tour. Let's get right to it.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Alex Ward is the national security reporter at Politico. And Alex, didn't think that we'd be talking about Saudis and sports washing today on the show, but we get this, what feels like a massive surprise announcement this morning. We want to give listeners the background on all of this in a second. But first, what happened today between the PGA Tour and LIV Golf?
They merged. They're going to become one. We're going to have one major, mega, global golf league. And it's kind of a wild cade somewhat on both their sides, right? The PGA was basically suing LIV Golf because they were stealing away their players. LIV Golf was suing the PGA because saying it was, on an antitrust case, saying more than one league should exist. And instead of fighting each other, they're just going to join each other, which is sort of a weirdly forced marriage. But here we are. Now the PGA and LIV Golf are going to cease to exist, and they're going to be all under one umbrella organization named TBD.
So in sports history, this is not totally unprecedented in that, like, the NBA and the ABA merged, the NFL and the AFL merged. But in those cases, we're not talking about a foreign wealth fund funding one of the sides. We're talking about, just American team ownership and, league ideas. And in some ways, this is most similar to the NBA-ABA merger, where the three-point line and, like, some of the dunk contests and stuff comes over into the NBA and makes the game better. But that's just looking at it from, like, the golf/basketball side. LIV Golf is it wholly unique in the global sports stage with how it's funded and how it exists, or are there other, leagues in the world that also are reliant on a foreign wealth fund, and then we can get into sports washing and what it is and why it exists?
Yeah, look, there are leagues that do have government support, right? It's not like the Premier League gets some money from the government in England, the soccer league there, and some others. So it's not like completely out of the realm that there's a sovereign wealth fund or a government-connected fund to help a sports league. But
are there anywhere it's a foreign government, right? England supporting the English Premier League is one thing, but Saudi in a mostly American golf league, that's different?
As far as I understand it, maybe oddly, the only thing I can sort of think of is how we have Canadian teams and, like, American sports leagues. Right. But, like...
the Raptors.
Right. Or, like, Monaco, the soccer team playing in the French league, because, like, why would it... Soccer league is like, why... But, like, basically... But all this to say is I think you're right. I don't think we have, the equivalent of, like, say, the Premier League, and then Japan comes in as like, hey, we want to have a league in England to compete with you, and then they end up merging. I don't think we've seen anything like that before. If it exists, I apologize for not knowing it, but I've never heard of that.
Okay, and that gets into why the Saudis want to do this, which is your absolute area of expertise. Alex Ward from Politico is with us. Why do the Saudis want to get into sports?
So I think, if I may just take a quick backstory here to get to this.
Sure.
So the Saudis, for decades, really, their entire relationship with the United States has been based on basically oil for security, right? The U.S. provides security guarantees to Saudis. The Saudis give us oil and our Western partners oil, and, like, everyone's happy and great. That started to change after the U.S. had its own energy boom, right? We didn't need the Saudis as much for oil anymore, and so that started to break down. Cut to Saudi Arabia is the likely culprit behind the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the U.S. resident and journalist for the Washington Post. Then everyone freaks out about Saudi Arabia. The focus on its human rights abuses grows, and that's sort of what it's known for. That's its brand. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the young de facto leader of the country, does not like that brand. What he wants is for Saudi Arabia to be a nation known for technology, for scientific research, for sports, for a bunch of other things other than human rights abuses and the killings of journalists. So, for that reason, the easiest way to do that in sort of the minds of the public is to go through sports. This is where we get to the term that you mentioned earlier, sports washing. So what are they doing? Through this sovereign wealth fund, which is not directly owned by MBS, as the Crown Prince is known, but he's very heavily involved. They are funding Premier League soccer teams, including Newcastle United. They are the owners of that. LIV Golf in the United States, offering to purchase and fund stadiums in foreign governments in exchange for for votes to host the World Cup, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, they're just literally using it as a fund around the world to gain more, to move towards the center of global sports, and therefore towards the center of a public consciousness. So when the first thing you think of Saudi Arabia isn't like kill Khashoggi, human rights abuses, it's, oh yeah, they're the sports people. And if they have success, say the 2030 World Cup, which they want to host, is a success, or Newcastle United does well in the Champions League or wins the Premier League or whatever, then that is the connection you're supposed to make. That's what they want you to make.
So, simple, but feels like important follow-up. Are they actually doing better on the human rights front at all simultaneously? Because, like, it's one thing to say, oh, we want our brand to be this other thing. And by the way, we're working to be better in the areas where we are abusing humans and we killed a journalist, and we don't do that anymore. Are they simultaneously actually fixing the problems as well as trying to do a branding exercise? Or is it completely to distract from the ongoing human rights abuses and fact that they would absolutely do the exact same thing to a journalist like Jamal Khashoggi, a dissident, again?
I mean, famous last words. I think the Khashoggi thing was probably like sort of as far as they pushed it, and they got significant pushback. But let's be clear, the Saudis are still a major abuser of human rights on the world stage, attacking dissidents that are abroad, of course, jailing journalists at home, making women's lives miserable, et cetera, et cetera. No, it is still a massive abuser of human rights, and it is known as such. Now, it will pay lip service to saying, we're changing, we're making, these kinds of things. You'll have officials say, actually, we've had, equal pay for equal work forever. You in the United States do not have that. That kind of stuff. That's the lip service they pay to it. But, that's not where you want to be, right? I mean, if you're a reporter, you can't really do what you want to do. It's a repressive monarchy. For Saudi Arabia, the 12th century is too soon. It's like, this is why going through sports and seeming like a vibrant modern economy with, these exciting sports leagues under their belt, like that is supposed to really just turn your attention away.
Alex Ward, a national security reporter for Politico, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. I was about to ask you why sports, but I'll ask you this instead. Is it only sports? Are they doing similar things in technology sectors in other places, and I'm just paying attention to sports because I'm a sports guy? Or is there other stuff happening in this what's called marketing effort that Saudi Arabia is making that it obviously has sports as a massive part of it?
Yeah, it's trying to build futuristic cities. It's trying to be it's hosting technology conferences. It's making inroads with, organizations here in the U.S. so to bring companies over with sort of think tanks, that kind of thing. It's not just sports, right? It's not all the eggs are in that basket, but it's by far its biggest bet, really. I mean, in terms of like a PR campaign, I think in terms of the technology stuff, that's its biggest PR campaign within governments, right? When Biden, and I was there with him, went to Saudi Arabia last year for the famous fist bump, among the things they discussed was 5G, 6G, cyber, future tech stuff. That's when you listen to Biden, the U.S. officials, they were like, yeah, okay, we didn't maybe get the oil deal we wanted, but look at all this list of things we're doing. And for the Saudis, A-okay, right? Because that's where they want governments to focus, that the Saudis are interested in these kinds of things. But of course on sports, my God, I mean, if you can have the Saudi Pro League, the Saudi Soccer League, and have Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi, and Karim Benzema all play there at the same time, don't tell me that's not sort of one of the first things you think of when you think of Saudi Arabia. That's precisely what they want.
So that actually does lead to a really interesting question, because when I think of LIV Golf, I think of sports washing and think of all the terrible things that they've done. Same thing, I think of Cristiano Ronaldo as a shill who sold out because he could make a bunch of money and, demeans himself and what he still is as a player. Messi, same thing. Benzema, same thing. They could be competing for Champions League titles, and instead they're taking hundreds of millions of dollars. And, okay, they get the hundreds of millions of dollars, but at what cost? And by the way, you're very, very rich. You could make $80 million or whatever it is in playing for PSG, which, by the way, is also owned by a Middle Eastern monarch, or, another team that's not. So I guess like the long-winded wind-up to ask, like, is this actually working? Because like I feel like for Qatar in the 2022 World Cup, it actually put a brighter light on them and their abuses than if they had just stayed quiet behind the scenes. But for Saudi Arabia, with what they've done so far with LIV, with recruiting some of these mega soccer stars, with Newcastle, is it working?
I could imagine that it will. And look, by the way, just in a weird fairness to like the Benzemas of the world.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to make what, $430 million over 2 years. Like that's not just money. That's money.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
So I mean, granted,
they offer Tiger Woods $1 billion, and like that's about the only number that can get Tiger Woods' attention.
For sure. So like, I agree with you. Yes, you can make and live a very comfortable life doing anything else. But like, who among us, right? Then now we're in that sort of joke of like, what kind of person are you? Depends on how much money, right? Is it working? I mean, look, I think constantly of that scene, the scenes outside of St. James Park, Newcastle United, when it was announced that the Saudi fund bought them. I mean, the fans stormed the stadium. People were wearing masks of MBS, right, and celebrating. Is that an isolated incident? Perhaps, because of course this was a team that was struggling a really long time. Now they just made the Champions League, right? So you could understand why a fandom that had been sort of yearning for success would sort of take anything. But I've heard very little from the Newcastle family being like, well, we wish we had gotten here a different way, but like here we are. Nothing about that, right? You haven't heard the British government really do much, even though in theory they're supposed to be investigating, Saudi involvement. I mean, it's a shortcut for them. And so I think on the politics side and some of these early moments, it is working. And I think it takes time, right? The Khashoggi thing is still only a few years ago. MBS still hasn't had like his big showpiece. I think a 2030 World Cup could be that. You could imagine that, once this like new tech city and all that kind of stuff opens and world leaders go, you'll go, oh, like it isn't just that like desert kingdom that's sort of unfortunately stereotypically in all of our minds. Like it can be a modern place. It is a place of contrast, to be very reductive of it, but like it has that sort of old style repressive monarchy, and it has, while all that's going on, some pretty modern fixings. So yeah, I think given enough time, I mean, I can't imagine anyone slowing the Saudis down. Given enough time, I could imagine that, yeah, like that will be, again, one of the first things that comes to your mind. So
as Alex Ward is our guest, national security reporter for Politico, talking about the big news today where the PGA Tour has merged with LIV Golf, which is backed by the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which comes with all of the complications that we are discussing. You mentioned what kind of person are you? Depends on how much money to do the terrible thing or whatever thing you want to call joining LIV Golf, let's say. Because to your point, if I am Dustin Johnson, I can take the $400 million or I cannot, and I don't know how much it really moves the needle on the geopolitics of it all. Is someone's life in Saudi Arabia worse because I took the money? That's impossible to calculate any singular person. My life is way better if I have $400 million a year. So, like, what role do the individuals here have, whether it's a Ronaldo, whether it's a Messi, whether it's the LIV golfers? And then I guess after that we can talk about organizations, governments, the PGA Tour, et cetera. But just on an individual level, like, what difference does it make if any individual agrees to be a part of this sports washing experiment?
I mean, it just helps them, right? I mean, look, I'm an FC Barcelona fan, lifelong FC Barcelona fan, and I'm not particularly happy that Messi, even though he's not a player for my team anymore, but like is a tourism ambassador for Saudi Arabia. And that helps, right? Because even if you know nothing about Saudi Arabia, and even if you don't really know that much about soccer, but you sort of know the name Messi because of his greatness over the years, and you go, well, if Messi is like involved with them, It can't be that bad. So there is a sense in which they do have some responsibility for helping. Benzema going, again, for a lot of money, but like that helps build the brand of that league. That could also help entice other players. I mean, look, this is obviously sort of a without the human rights complications, but like MLS was a backwater until Beckham decided to come over. And without Beckham, you don't have other world stars come to the league. And so, Ronaldo going, Benzema going, possibly Messi going, that only opens the door to other sort of retiring players to go there and help that league build its brand and therefore help that country build its brand. So I think it's not like individual decisions. I think you're right on that, but they sort of compound on each other. And it can grow and grow into a bigger thing to the point that, where if MLS is basically like world soccer's retirement home, like Saudi Arabia could be world soccer's retirement yacht, like that's like that's just going to be where the best players go to have a great time.
What a quote. That compounding, factor is what I figured the answer was. It's just, it's a general slow motion normalization of it, as opposed to the shock value of like, no, this is the country that killed a Washington Post journalist, and let's not lose sight of that. So that then brings us to the organizational level and the PGA Tour. What does it mean for an American institution, the PGA Tour that has been around for the better part, if not an entire century at this point, to get into business with essentially the Saudi Arabian government?
I mean, look, I can't say that I know like sort of how the government regulations about foreign business coming in to do like with sports leagues. There is a committee that looks at foreign investment into like national security related things and basically says yes or no. I don't think there's a structure for this. And so if you are, granted, the PGA is just the PGA, but like if you're the NFL, if you're MLB, if you're NHL, if you're NBA, be careful, right? Because you could imagine that the door is at least slightly open to the idea that a foreign government funds a competing league, gets some pretty high-level backing in the U.S. You could imagine if you throw a couple million to the Trump family, they might be interested, right? Or others, like not just them, but of course Trump is a big booster of LIV Golf. You could imagine that then that causes a problem. You could have some players decide to go to the other, et cetera, et cetera. Like you could see this playbook play out again and again and again. Now, it feels like maybe PGA was ripe for the picking to a certain extent, right? It wasn't as big as the other leagues. It had a whole bunch of problems. But if you are in the suites of all those other major American sports leagues or other sports leagues around the world, I should say, like you are more nervous today than you were hours ago, because now it is, at least the idea is conceivable that a foreign government comes in, competes, and then either usurps your league or merges with it.
So a buddy of ours at the radio stations, Ryan Clary, who produces the show down the hall from us in the afternoons, he tweeted something similar to that of like what would stop an NBA or an NFL from getting a competitor. And to me, this is where the government stuff comes in. Like to build an NFL stadium, like an NFL owner is not sharing their stadium with someone else, right? Hey, we want to come compete with you. Can we use your stadium? Like, no. And the permitting and those kinds of things that are required to build an NFL or a NFL-style stadium, an NBA-style arena, I just think government is too involved at that point. Am I wrong on that? That part of the uniqueness of the PGA being right for the picking is golf courses exist already, and they are owned by private folks who can host an event like this without some of the things that need to happen to host a basketball game, a football game, a baseball game?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly fair. And I think that's probably one reason why I guess PGA was right for the picking. But let's say, for example, thanks to the Netflix show Drive to Survive, right? Like Formula One is now a mega thing in the United States.
100%.
So, right,
I am a victim of the Drive to Survive disease, if you will. I now watch F1 every weekend. I didn't literally 3 months ago.
No, it's fine. My wife now loves Charles Leclerc more than me, so that's fine.
You and so many others are in that camp.
It is just, it's our lot in life now.
Yeah.
Look, you could imagine that the Saudis, granted they have a course there, but you could imagine that they develop more tracks around the world, that they can make their own sort of version or whatever. In other leagues that, you're right, don't have that sort of those barriers to entry, right? Like have a major football stadium or whatever. You could imagine soccer is not too hard to do, right? It's not terribly difficult to build a pitch, or you could imagine there are tons of stadiums that need refurbishing. That, or like, I don't think this is the Wrexham model in a way, but, a town that was devastated, here comes in some Hollywood money, right? Foreign money. Here comes some foreign money and helps build out a stadium, helps grow. I mean, you can imagine stuff like that happens. And they maybe do that in parallel. And so we'll refurbish your stadium, we'll help your team, but can you be one of the founding teams of the LIV Soccer League or whatever, right? And so again, I think that's sort of the more worst case scenario and far-fetched stuff. But the point is that we're having this conversation now as like, even if it's pie in the sky, that we wouldn't have had hours ago, right? Because of this merger. Like that's the implication, is that now there have always been sort of foreign owners in domestic leagues. We've never really had foreign owners of leagues.
Right.
And that's really the big innovation.
So one last like very hairy political question here. You mentioned the former president. Am I mistaken that a part of the ongoing DOJ investigations into him includes LIV Golf? And that was there, some of the like the documents case did he sell for, American secrets to the Saudi government, and some of that money is potentially being funneled through LIV? Like that is a theory that is out there that seems to have enough smoke that it's not just like people on Twitter throwing it out there. And obviously we know that his son-in-law, former senior advisor to the president, Jared Kushner, got $2 billion from the Saudis to go to his investment fund. So there's a lot of ties there. And considering the ongoing investigations, are you surprised that the PGA got involved with LIV Golf at this juncture?
Look, I mean, you're right. There's all this sort of smoke flying around LIV Golf. You don't have to dig too far into like just the Trump record to realize that he was, very supportive of the Saudis. It was I think it was his first trip to go to Saudi Arabia, or at least the Middle East, in that region. He, after Khashoggi was murdered, he basically was like, look, I'm not going to stop the Saudis from pouring billions of dollars into the American economy over this. Like that, he was very transparent about what he was up to, and of course that also had to do with the Kushner-MBS relationship, et cetera, et cetera. The PGA, I mean, I'm not surprised for the reason of I've really never seen businesses care about politics too much, and like, they care sort of in the abstract if it hurts their bottom line, but like, is the bottom line going to be hurt by this? Maybe there are some people who, really don't like Trump a lot and might not tune in anymore. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Venn diagram of that and golf fans was probably not super high demographically.
Right. Right. So, like, I think if you're thinking just the bottom line here, it probably makes a lot of sense. My pet theory, and I have no evidence of this, I admit purely that I'm speculating. My pet theory here is that the PGA just knew it was going to be outmatched in the courts. Not necessarily on the merits, but on the money. Like, right, the PGA is a multi-billion-dollar company. Don't get me wrong. They have a ton of stuff. But you're going to go up against the Saudi Public Investment Fund?
Right.
Or up against, like, the riches of the kingdom? No way. You couldn't win. So if that is just sort of based on a future case that just requires money, investment. So I think in this case, you just, like, if you can't beat them, you join them. And I think that's sort of what happened here. Is the PGA going to lose a lot of viewers? I don't think so. You could even argue, now that you sort of get Phil Mickelson back, et cetera, like, it's going to do even better.
Sure.
So,
no, 100%. My question was, I guess, more on like a liability side. That was kind of what I was thinking of, is like, hey, this is a part of a giant DOJ investigation that's going to have a ton of scrutiny and could be a fairly key cog in it. Do you want to expose yourself as being aligned with those people, or becoming essentially those people with the merger? And I just didn't know, at this point, obviously it's also under investigation. We do not know the depth of the ties and all those kinds of things, because that's what's being investigated and that's how investigations work. But I thought it was, considering that has been a point of discussion, and that seems to be getting a little bit louder in the discussion for those following the investigations and the reporting on them, I think it is an interesting time for this to come together for the PGA and for LIV.
No question. And if the PGA is smart, I assume they're smarter than I am. Like, I'm sure there's a clause in there that's like, if something comes out, we can X this deal. And you could even imagine the fact that we don't even have a name for this thing yet. Yeah. You could imagine that they might be waiting, and there's all this news about the DOJ investigations, et cetera, sort of ending-ish soon.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just like, we're going to merge, and then we're going to keep quiet, and they're going to wait for a while. But who knows?
Definitely.
I truly don't know.
Last question for Alex Ward, a national security reporter at Politico. National security-wise, is there any concern? Like, how does this change the security thoughts? I don't even know the best way to formulate this question, but like, you now have a Saudi heavy investment / control over this major American institution. There's leverage questions. There's all that kind of stuff. But these are private American citizens, etc. Not even all American. There's international golfers, obviously, all over the PGA. Are there any American national security concerns here, or is it just kind of the general sports washing and things that we've talked about Saudi Arabia that is going to give them more leeway to do the things that they want in the world and within their own country?
I think that, like, I'm not worried as this moment for the safety of the golfers. I'm not worried about sort of anything else. I think if you are looking sort of the national security angle, you could imagine, and now I'm just speaking sort of hypothetically here, but you could imagine a situation in which a future administration doesn't necessarily want as close a ties with the Saudis, right? There are some on the Republican end, but most on the Democratic end, who don't want that. And then you could sort of see, again, if this sports washing thing works out, the public be like, wait, I like those guys, right? I've been to their golf tournaments. I've seen Newcastle play. I went to the World Cup. Like, why are we? And so then it makes it harder if the public is against it to see like a U.S. administration who wants to lower ties to do so. I think that's a very, 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 very minimal possibility, because also at the end of the day, how often are you like really checking on the status of U.S. Saudi relations? Sure. But like, so no, I'm not worried in terms of national security aspect, but I do think in terms of, again, like the diplomatic aspect that could play out down the line, but I think that's a very minimal possibility.
Right. And to underscore the point, things that are happening within Saudi Arabia to their own citizens, et cetera, like that's also the point here. The human rights abuses being covered up is why this is happening. And the more successful they are, the more they get away with. So I think that's worth mentioning on the way out. Alex, this was great. Thank you so much for your insight, for your information. And as this continues to play out, hopefully we can have you back. And apparently we just have you back to talk soccer and F1.
Anytime you want.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Thanks again to Alex Ward from Politico for coming on, talking LIV Golf PGA Tour merger. To Ashburn we go, though. Now welcome in our good buddy Mitch Tischler, Washington Football Talk podcast. Talk a little bit about minicamp. Mitchell, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Finally, a topic that we're not the biggest controversy in town.
Hey! Is there a little piece of you that will miss having that element when Josh Harris buys the football team?
Absolutely not. It's been 15 years of craziness. Every offseason, there's different stories, different things happening. It's going to be so exciting to just talk football and to concentrate on what's happening on the field and hopefully watch this organization improve from the top on down.
I agree with you. As someone who has to do 3 hours of radio a day, knowing that there is always a chance of absolute chaos, there is some element of that where it's like, I don't know, maybe today is just going to be a Dan day. Not that I would look for it, but sometimes it just happens to you. But I think the majority of days are you want the good stuff, and I feel like there's just going to be a lot more good stuff. And I'm A-okay with sacrificing the occasional day of chaos.
Absolutely. Whether the football is good or bad on the field, none of us got into the profession to talk about all the other shenanigans that were going on. I love football. We love talking football. It's great to get back to that.
No doubt. And I think what today proves is there's plenty of other shenanigans in the world. Time for someone else to be the subject if we need to talk shenanigans. All right. On the field, let's start with the biggest thing that everybody wants to know. I don't know if it's the most important thing considering he's a lineman and they're not wearing pads, but how did Chase Young look today to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest point that I would make is just to remember that these guys are in shorts and T-shirts, so there's not a lot of hitting, not a lot of grabbing. But Chase Young looked really good. He looked smooth, and I think that, to me, that's the most important thing. They were doing a bunch of individual lateral drills, going up and back over the tackling dummy bags, and he looked much smoother, much more confident, better this year than he did even as we started to get towards the end of last year. And to me, I think that's the most important thing. He had a pretty hefty brace on that surgically repaired right knee. But you know what? If that's one of the things that, for him as a mental, support helps him kind of feel confident that knee is back and that it's, going to do everything that he needs it to do, then it's great. And to me, today I think went as well as it can go for a lineman when you're running around in shorts and a T-shirt and, beyond what, you saw on the field with him running around. He did look good. He was able to duck the corner around Charles Leno a couple times. Again, remember, shorts and T-shirt, can't take too much away from it, but he did get after the quarterback. You could see the enthusiasm that Chase brings to the field and kind of that, childlike love for the game that's contagious amongst the defense. And it was just good to see him back on the field, back with the rest of the guys. And you can see that, there's no ill will towards anything that's happened the rest of this offseason.
So I'm glad you brought that up because we played the sound from the press conference earlier, and to call it uninspiring would be incredibly kind to Chase, but it's also a press conference. I don't get the sense that he cares much for doing that kind of thing. And what really matters ultimately is how he plays and really in terms of like an attitude, if you will, while annoying, and it's much nicer to have the Terry McLaurins who are affable and great to talk to for us. As long as his teammates react well to him, I think that's all that matters. What are some of the things you can tell us from being there, eyes on the ground, that kind of show that, this is pro sports. Guys don't really hold it against other guys for misinvoluntary stuff, and that Chase is A-okay in the eyes of everyone who was there the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think you just see kind of the interpersonal, conversations and stuff that he's having around the field. Not even necessarily when he's on the field in 11-on-11s, but one of the things that I really liked seeing was he would come off the field after an 11-on-11 rep and run right over to his position coach, Jeff Canina, and the two of them would be discussing clearly, hand signals, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I did, whatever it was. And then, beyond that, you just see him kind of bouncing up and down the sidelines. He obviously hangs out with the D-line a fair amount, but you'll see him move over to kind of where the linebackers stand and, kind of shoot the moon with them a little bit. And then, work his way to DBs. He's one of those guys that, he's a big personality, and you can't help, aside from his physical size, you can't help but see him stand out on the football field.
That's great. I look forward to seeing that in person tomorrow when I get out there. Mitch Tischler with us, of course, Washington Football Talk podcast. Him, JP, Pete do a great job with that. Otherwise, on the defensive side, Cam Curl today continued his kind of offseason plan, I guess, not participating in the team drills. From some tweets I saw, he was kind of shadowing things way behind the action. What do you make of his decision to continue to show up, participate in a very limited amount, and also what opportunity that creates for younger players like Quan Martin who are getting extra reps?
Yeah, I was saying that I think that Cam Curl might be one of the biggest winners of this offseason. To me, what he's doing is the exact perfect thing to do when you're a player who's in contract negotiations or waiting for a new contract, but still want to be part of the team. And it's what Deron Payne did last year. Came to minicamp, obviously, which was mandatory, came to OTAs, participated in some individual drills. And then when they went to the 7-on-7, 11-on-11, offense versus defense stuff, kind of stood back off to the side and took mental reps. I think as we just got done talking about Chase Young and, all the frustration about, should he have been there, shouldn't he have? I think the way that Cam Curl's handled it has been perfect. And, for the young guys, I think we're seeing on offense with Sam Howell a lot, where he's getting a lot of extra reps. You're seeing on the defensive side as well with some of the younger players. I mean, you mentioned Quan Martin, certainly Emmanuel Forbes is getting a lot of work, but even when you go a little bit later, Percy Butler is coming off a year where he had to learn 3 different positions and now kind of is settling into that, kind of free safety role. And, Derek Forrest has a couple of years under his belt, but he's also, a pretty young player. So it's important for all these guys to get as many reps as they can. And all of a sudden, this secondary, especially the safety group, looks really strong to me. It might be one of the better position groups on this roster. And I'm excited to see when Cam Curl gets back there, what they can do back there.
Yeah, there is this fine balance between, like, this guy knows what he's doing, but he can also be helping others. It's kind of the complaint, if I have one, about Charles Leno not coming to OTAs. Like, am I concerned about Leno? No. Would he make Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul better? Yes. How does Curl interact with his teammates, though, to kind of mitigate that in a way that it's, yes, of course, he's not on the field with them, but you're not missing out on a lot of the communication that you would get if he was there?
Yeah, certainly, the fact that he's there means he's in the meetings, he's listening with the group. They're building that bond, that trust that, happens every offseason, at NFL teams, around the league. And then on top of it, the fact that he's during the 11-on-11 drills, he's, standing back by the coaches, he's going through the mental reps, and you see him, standing there going over different things with some of the younger guys. And it's just, half of being successful is showing up. And for me, I think Cam Curl is just handling this like a true professional. He has every right to be as frustrated as anybody else. He's a late round pick, and, he hasn't gotten paid yet, and he deserves to get paid about as much as anybody on that defense. And he could be a malcontent, and he could be frustrated, and I would understand that as well, because again, he hasn't gotten his cash yet. So the fact that he's there and he's sitting in the meeting rooms, going through the on-field work and off-field work with everybody means a lot to that group, and means a lot for kind of, his leadership on that secondary.
Mitch Tischler, Washington Football Talk podcast with us here on the Hoffman Show. All right, what everyone's been waiting for, quarterback. How'd Sam look today? How'd Jacoby look today?
Sam Howell looked up and down. I think that he had, one really, really good day of OTAs at the beginning when we saw him, and he's been kind of, in this roller coaster the past couple weeks. But I think that's kind of what I expect to see from a young quarterback as he kind of gets his sea legs under him, as he starts, learning the new offense and getting used to, being the guy and being in charge. And so, he has a couple throws every day that you're like, whoa, that's bad. That's not NFL quality. And then he has a couple throws, and you're like, is that Tom Brady back there? He had a throw to Terry McLaurin off the sideline, a little like 10, 12 yard out that he probably missed him by 5-10 yards out of bounds. Percy Butler was on the sideline, kind of tried to get away from the ball, and hit him right in the behind, which was kind of funny. But then he comes back in the next play. He finds Cole Turner, on a little seam route, and puts the ball where only Cole Turner can get it. Cole ended up dropping the ball, but it was a perfect throw right on the money. And I think that's kind of what you're going to see, especially early on from him. And it'll be interesting as he grows and gets more comfortable with everything, how it will all play out. But I like what I've seen from him so far. You want a little more consistency, but you see inconsistency from young quarterbacks all the time. What I do like is that he gets the guys in and out of the huddle quickly. He seems to know what he's doing at the line of scrimmage, and as he gets more comfortable progressing through his reads, I think we'll see him kind of take some steps forward and be able to kind of deliver that ball quicker and on time and in the right place. And that's going to be a big thing that we're going to have to see early in training camp when we get to late June, early August, is how well he's able to do it. So I'm excited for him. I think that he's going to provide a good opportunity for these guys, but it's certainly going to be it's not going to be all highs with this guy.
No, for sure. He's young. And, something that we've talked about on our podcast with Logan and on the show is the ecosystem right now is a funky one because at least up until last week, they were doing all pass work. So there was no threat of the run. There's no play action. There's no honesty in the drops and all those kind of things on the defensive side. Did that change at all today? Have they actually done any run periods yet?
They haven't done much run. They haven't done many run periods at all, and that's certainly something to keep in mind as you read Twitter and see that a pass got deflected and then picked off, and whatever else may happen. It happens during training camp all the time as you start progressing and getting a little later in camp. But these defenses know what plays you're running. They know the route combinations through and through. They've been practicing against it now for a month straight. They're as in tune with what the offense is doing as they will ever be with an offense. And so, it's always a balance between young players kind of, showing off what they got, but then also playing a disciplined, kind of realistic football game. And that was kind of one of the things that I really liked about Eric Bieniemy when he spoke with the media, was he talked about kind of sifting through what's real and what's not. And a lot of times in minicamp, and again, they're in shorts and a T-shirt, you're not getting a true pass rush. You're never getting a true jam, from a corner on the outside who can disrupt a play. So you got to kind of sift through what's real and what's not. And to me, I think just kind of seeing Sam have control of that offense and getting those guys in the right positions, getting the line, for the most part, with the right calls on how they're going to block the defensive fronts. I think that's kind of a real important part of what we're seeing right now in the T-shirts and shorts period.
All right, Mitch Tischler, everybody, Washington Football Talk podcast. How many pods a week are you guys doing right now during this part of the calendar?
We'll do 2 to 3 a week, depending on the news from the team and what's happening. I think we'll have 3 this week. So we just posted one a couple minutes ago. We'll have one tomorrow and Thursday as well, and we'll keep on trucking as we get to training camp, where we'll have daily pods every single day.
There you go. So, and we highly recommend on this show for people to listen to your podcast at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Everybody, when this show is over. That's selfish, Mitch.
Just
but,
when the show gets off the air.
Yeah, just the recommendation from this show. I'm sure others would prefer different times, but that's just me.
They can download it whenever you'd like.
There you go.
Find a break in the programming on 980 or 106.7 and get right on into it.
That's what we're talking about. Oh, just listen between 10 and 2. Nothing happens during that time. I'll see you out there tomorrow, buddy.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, it's Mitch Tischler, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, plenty of sound from Ron Rivera today. We will start diving into what the head coach had to say next.
Here's
more from Ron Rivera at the top of the hour on the quarterback situation, all that kind of stuff. Couple thoughts from Rivera on Chase Young now. Here it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Make sure you're subscribed so you get the notification every time we go live when the show starts every day. Makes it nice and easy to watch when you are ready. So Rivera was asked today about Chase Young and how do you kind of carries the momentum from this year or last year into this year? Because Chase did get a little bit of momentum at the end of last year. He played all right in those 3 games and showed some discipline and I think a higher level of play intellectually, let's call it, than he did in the previous year. He clearly physically wasn't back yet and was trying to join a season mid-season, which is also always hard. But here's Rivera on Young and carrying over, at least coming out of the season healthy, into this year.
Well, I think the biggest thing as far as he's concerned more than anything else is just being healthy. You know, he started to get healthier by the end of the year and played for us in 4 games. And we just want to see him pick up where he left off. You know, he was starting to play faster and faster, and just love to see him get out there and really run around and, you know, kind of cut it loose and not be tentative. And that's probably the biggest thing for him.
This might be a silly question, but is he automatically back in the starting lineup, assuming he is healthy and all that?
Absolutely. I mean, again, the big thing more than anything else is, you know, this has been a strictly voluntary, and you know, and you don't reward guys and take things away for guys for not being around. They're going to get their reps. One thing we are going to do is we're going to be smart. We're not just going to throw them out there right away just because we don't know, what speed they've been working at. And that's the thing you have to be careful of because they're going to go from 0 to 60 very quickly because they want to get in there. There's going to be a lot of energy. And you really do have to be smart. So we're not going to come out and, you know, if there's 60 reps, expect them to take, 50 or 40 of them. We got to get them and see where they are.
Makes sense to me. Reports early, I mean, Mitch just said it when he was with us that they look great. This was, of course, before practice because that's how they do the media. So what is Ron's, expectation on not just Chase but Montez Sweat as they return to practice?
Just fitting back in, which I believe they will. I mean, they're guys that make an impact on our football team, and guys know who they are. Simple enough,
straightforward. And then the big question is, what kind of effects does Chase's injury leave on him? What kind of player is he right now? What kind of player will he be by week 1? Here's Rivera before seeing him practice. It'll be interesting to see what his answer to this would be tomorrow after seeing him practice. But this was Rivera this morning.
Are there any lingering issues with Chase and his knee, or is he 100% at this point?
Well, we'll find out today. I'm pretty confident, though, because he looked good. He really did. I know the doctors were very all positive about everything he's done. And, and again, I know part of the reasoning him not being around is he wanted to really focus in on just that specifically, and he wanted to do that. And again, it'll be one of those things that the proof will be in the pudding when we watch him on practice.
We love some proof that's in some pudding. Anthony, are you a pudding fan?
I can eat it. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm going to the store and I'm buying pudding. Like, I can eat it, though.
I think that's something that most adults would say. I don't feel like when you think of a snack, most adults are like, pudding.
Exactly.
Now, like a banana, like some kind of adult pudding dessert, like a banana pudding, like I know you started getting into kind of more of a cobbler situation.
Oh, like banana pudding?
Yeah, but like that's like a dessert that people have.
That's my favorite dessert, actually.
Yeah, it's so good. But like it's different than like a little pudding cup.
Yeah. That you take. I used to take pudding cups for snack.
Yeah, I mean the thing is like there's just some foods that they were part of your childhood because they fit well in a lunchbox and traveled easily.
Yep.
And I feel like pudding is one of those.
It is.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just like now I think we live different lives. As adults, we live a post-pudding life.
Are you saying you're too old and too grown to have some pudding?
Absolutely not.
Okay, just making sure.
That if it was like offered, but it's like like you said, when am I ever gonna have it?
Tomorrow.
I'm not gonna buy it.
One. See?
Well, so here's this is how I know I'm so old. I'm like, is there lactose in that?
Oh,
Anthony, this is the bane of my existence.
That is a great question.
I have to
that
think
I
about
do not
that
have
with
the answer for.
everything I eat. For all I know, though, maybe I've been missing out. Maybe pudding is lactose free and could have been having a delicious nostalgia of childhood this whole time.
It might be.
Probably not. Probably not. I'd like to formally apologize for the last 90 seconds of radio. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, Rivera on the quarterbacks.
Daniel Snyder has a...
All right, it's the final hour of the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. More from Ron Rivera now, of course, head coach of the Commanders. By the way, Anthony and I will be at OTAs tomorrow. Yes, that's us. We'll be there. I believe we will be talking to either Quan Martin or Emmanuel Forbes. They're checking on which one of those two will be available. But I believe we will be talking with either Quan or Emmanuel. So very excited about that. We'll have that interview for you, of course, tomorrow here on the show. We'll have observations, see what else we do. But yeah, tomorrow we will be out at minicamp. And then on Thursday, I believe we'll be going to the Wizards introductory press conference. Wizards announced today they're going to introduce Michael Winger on Thursday. So I don't know exactly what content we will come out of that. Obviously, we'll play some of the press conference bites. We're hoping to sit down with Winger, TBD, but we will definitely have full coverage of that on Thursday. So big week ahead. By Friday, we'll have all the minicamp in wraps to be able to go over. So very excited for that. Good stuff all week. And that's that. What's that look for, Ant?
I don't know. I actually don't know why I was making a face.
It looked like that was a very purposeful face, and then now you don't have a reason for it.
I don't.
Okay. That's encouraging. That's good stuff. Great work out of you. It's distracting the hell out of me. And I am ADD as could be. We gotta be careful, bro. We're gonna wind up in Timbuktu if we're not careful. All right. To Rivera. Ron Rivera spoke before practice today. I'm excited to be able to ask him a couple of questions I've got in mind going into tomorrow. But spoke before practice today about the quarterback situation at length in response to multiple questions. Starting off with kind of what the process is for them moving forward, picking their QB1. Is it Sam Howell? Where's Jacoby Brissett stand? Here was Rivera.
Well, we really won't get into where they are until next week. But for the most part, I check in with Eric and get his feel for it, and then I check in with Tavita and the other coaches and really get a feel for them. I talk to the players as well and see what they're thinking. I mean, this is one of those things that we all got to feel very good and be very comfortable and confident in one another. And so asking everybody, what they're seeing, how they're feeling, what do they think, that's important. And so we've tried to make sure we're getting, we're getting a lot of perspectives on this.
One thing that I think is Rivera's strength as a leader is he's extremely inclusive. Now, he gets himself in trouble at times when he's not, a.k.a. I do believe the Wentz deal probably was a little bit like that. But even if you don't listen to people, asking their opinion makes them feel included. If we're doing something for the show and I kind of have my mind made up, I can just go ahead and do it. Or I can be like, Anthony, what do you think? And either he will agree with me, and then it's like, yeah, Anthony and I decided to do this. Or I can be like, hey, actually, I think we should do it this way. And I can try to convince him, and either he can expose a hole in my theory, or I can convince him and we move forward with what I was going to do anyway. But then, Anthony, do you feel good? Do you feel better about yourself that way because you're included in the process?
Yes, sir.
Of course. That's good leadership right there. As opposed to just making unilateral decisions and dragging people along. So whether they actually listen to a player about the quarterback situation, I mean, sure, there's some valuable input. Oh, yeah, he keeps doing this to us. I don't like the way he communicates. Like, I would want to know that. The more information is good, but ultimately it's on Ron to make the final decision. Obviously, Eric has an extremely heavy voice in that. But it's one thing that I think they do a good job of, and I actually believe him. I don't think that's actually lip service. As for whether this is still a competition or not, here's Rivera in his own words.
Do you still consider it a competition between Jacoby and Sam?
I do. I again, it's one of those things that, guys, it's just because I said he's going to start off as QB1 doesn't mean he's going to finish as QB1. I like to believe, though, that if he goes out and does things he's capable of, he's got a very, very good chance of doing that. I think Jacoby has shown us some things that have really gotten people's attention. We talk about Jacoby almost as much as we talk about Sam. So I just think as we go through this process and, until we play games, it'd be unfair to start making assessments.
Yeah, it'd also be stupid. Forget unfair to the guys involved. Be unfair to the rest of the team. Hey, we're just going to go ahead and make a decision now. We don't play games for months. We have overwhelming majority of practice time on the offseason ahead of us because there's double the amount of training camp practices as there are OTAs. And by the way, those are in pads. Those are not as scripted at times where the defense knows what's happening. Those include run plays. Those do all the things that eliminate some of the biases and issues that come up during the spring. I think you make a decision then. Now, if Sam had run away with the job and it's clear that he's the best guy, then I think you probably still don't make an announcement, but you're probably like in your head, that dude's QB1. Like, we're not going to give Brissett any reps in August. But I don't know that they're there yet. I think depending on how the next 2 days go and how the things go next week and how the first 3 days, let's say, of training camp goes where they're not in pads. Day 4 is when you're allowed to after the acclimation period. I think that you could see Jacoby Brissett start to get some first-team reps and see how he looks. And if he's consistently better, then you open things up and split the reps, and ultimately, how does it go? Sam has to keep improving. Jacoby's a better football player right now. We knew that. Jacoby's actually played NFL football. Sam's played a game. So I guess Sam has played NFL football, but not very much of it. So the question is, if Jacoby is starting here, starting at, let's say, a 6.5 because it's a new offense, and he's going to get to 7.5 because he's Jacoby Brissett, and that's who Jacoby Brissett is, and Sam Howell's going to start at a 5 or a 4 even because he's barely played, but you think he can get to an 8, he's got to show that he's on the path to 8 and that he's going to get there in a reasonable amount of time, that you're not going to blow half your season getting him to 8. He has got to improve. And I'm not saying he isn't, but what I'm saying is, and I get the question from Fortier there, but let's not pretend like they have to make any decision anytime soon or that they're evaluating things based off of a grade in a practice. It's about trajectories and where these guys are going. So will Rivera give Brissett any first-team reps in this spring, and nevertheless in training camp?
Well, that'll be something that that we'll sit down and talk about once we finish up. I know Eric likes what he's seeing right now from both guys, and we'll just continue to work.
I think when Ron gives non-answers, that actually says a lot. It says a lot about where he's at. I think it's something that's on the table. I think it's something he doesn't want to admit right now because that's just going to cause more hoopla, more conversation, more of everything. Like, obviously, we're talking about it now, but if he's like, yeah, we're going to give Jacoby one reps, then it kicks it into overdrive. And I don't think that there's a need to kick things into overdrive. I think that's a savvy answer by Ron. Sometimes you say less and you tell us what we need to know without having the soundbite there to say it out loud. By the way, if Brissett gets first-team reps, this is what he thought about kind of that whole issue when he was asked about it after practice.
We'll cross that bridge when we cross that bridge. I've been in this league a while, and I've known at the drop of a hat how fast this league can turn, and just being ready to go has always been my mindset, and it's served me well this far, so it will still.
Good thing is Brissett and Howell have a pretty good relationship, so the tension is just about who gets the job. It's not any tension between them.
What's been your impression of Sam just working with him, watching him?
It's been a lot of fun. Smart, can make all the throws. Been a joy to be around. I know it makes you sound old, but he's been really good to be around. Learning from each other, competing against each other. It's just been a lot of fun.
I love when other people do things that make them sound old when they're like around my age or younger than me, because it's something that just happens to you in your early 30s. You're like, when did I become someone who sounds like someone who's old? Son of a biscuit. And it happened to Jacoby Brissett today. Makes me feel like Jacoby Brissett. I don't know what that means. We're not going to unpack it. Just thing struck me. That was not the most important thing in that quote. I think this is why you bring Brissett in. You bring him in because he's a pro. He is going to do the right things. He's going to help you try to win games, whether that is helping prepare the starter or helping, be the starter. And that's obviously an exciting thing for the Commanders to have in their quarterback room, whether Jacoby starts or whether it is ultimately on Sam. More from Rivera next. He talked about Deron Payne and what he wants to see from him this year. Antonio Gibson, the left guard spot. So some of the miscellaneous hot topics of training camp. We wrap up with the final little bit of Ron Rivera next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Celebrate. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. More from Ron Rivera now. We're done with minicamp, or done with day one of minicamp. This is from his press conference this morning. And actually, one of the biggest stories in the league right now, Ron was asked to weigh in on. Sports gambling, there's a story emerging from Indianapolis where a Colts player is likely to be suspended for a while on games. There's a lot of talk around the league about how players are unaware of a lot of the gambling rules, and many might have gotten themselves in trouble because they were simply unaware, which I find pretty shocking because I was under the impression that the league was very explicit about what can and can't be done. It's one thing to send a memo, but I thought there was like mandatory trainings and stuff. If not, the league and the PA have a lot to answer for, considering how readily available gambling is. But Rivera was asked about it this morning. Here's what the Commanders head coach said.
Well, the first thing we did was when it first broke initially, we did have a player that was involved, unfortunately. We reached out to the league and asked them if they had a PowerPoint deck that they could send and share with us. And so Malcolm took charge of that. Malcolm Blackham, our director of player development, he took charge of it. We got Mike Jacobs, our head of security here, involved as well. And then we presented to the players. And it was, and it's presented to them every year. But what we did was we did an extra emphasis in it. And then I believe it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow. The league will have a presentation as well. So we're going to continue that. It'll be a presentation that we will do during training camp as well, again, just so we continue to hammer these things home that, we've got to be very, very careful and understand that, the integrity of the league, the integrity of each team, and then the players' own integrity and coaches' integrity for that matter as well are at stake. And we have to be very, very diligent about this.
Yeah, you do. And you also, the chances that you're going to win more money than you would by losing your salary are probably pretty slim. And if I was Rivera and I was the league and I was everybody, that's probably what I would say. I'd say, like, if you are 100% sure that you understand the rules and you're not in a place where you're going to get in trouble, then, and you want to throw down a couple of dollars. And, like, again, this is accepting the current rules as they are, not advocating for different rules, which I would. But just within the context of the current structure, if you want to throw down a couple bucks on your alma mater and you're 100% positive that you are clear of all the places that you're not allowed to bet, go ahead. But even if you throw down a couple grand, you going to win a full season salary on a bet? Okay, well then you're probably just better off avoiding it. That would honestly be my message to, bet with your teammates. If you want to bet college football or you want to bet a basketball game, bet a dinner with your teammates. Just do it in a way that you're not going to get in trouble. You have something riding on it. You get the adrenaline rush. You get the thrill. Not going to get suspended by the league. That's what I would do. But I'm looking at this purely from an efficacy threshold, not or lens, not necessarily a league policy, let's call it, lens. The policy should change. It's utterly ridiculous that you can't gamble and you're watching college football on Saturday night in your hotel if you're a grown-ass adult. But that's a different conversation that we've had before and perhaps we'll have again at a different time. As for the on-the-field stuff, obviously the offensive line is a massive question for this team. So how does Sadiq Charles look so far at left guard? Rivera this morning.
What gives you all the confidence that this will be the year that it all clicks for Sadiq Charles there at left guard as he kind of starts out as the one there?
Well, I think one thing is getting the first opportunity more so than anything else. I think that's important. I like the way he's been doing things. There's a lot of positives that are pointing in the direction that this is a great opportunity for him.
That is not a confident man. That does not sound like someone who has a great answer for that question. I will say for Sadiq, a lot of the issues have been injury related. He's been okay when he's been able to practice and play, but he has got to stay healthy and be able to grow and get better as a player. Or, I think for your Commanders, obviously be bad for Sadiq, but if Chris Paul develops and is better, then better is good. Now, one of the things that's interesting about how they're running training camp, and this is kind of my question going into tomorrow for Rivera, is you are very limited in what you are doing right now offensively. Like, as much as you are doing with the passing game and the screen game, you are not doing a lot of run game work, et cetera. And what are the repercussions of that? What are the pluses and minuses of that, of how you're choosing to spend your time? One of those is seeing how the line gels. You can see it in pass pro, but how do they work together in the run game, and how do they develop that chemistry? So Rivera asked today about the general chemistry of the offensive line, but also, mixing guys around and building depth and cross-training as you go here in the spring.
chemistry is important. You've got some young guards that got to be able to work together. Sadiq is there, and as is Chris Paul, and their communication with Charles will be real important. Cornelius Lucas has done a really nice job, though, working with those young guys, and he's a guy that we know we can always count on as well. So it will be communication will be important. It's been really kind of neat to watch it. I think Nick has handled it very well as far as the center position has gone. You see those guys coming together and pulling in the right direction. The big thing we got to continue to do is grow that depth, because that obviously is one of the things that hit us pretty hard last year. And, we just got to be able to stay healthy and keep these guys healthy and keep them rolling.
Easier said than done on the health part. It's why you got to cross-train. It's why you got to have different guys available. I still think it's pretty fascinating on the O-line that, like, Stromberg is a third-round pick and Daniels is a fourth-rounder, and those guys are third string. Those guys got to get up on second string. Like, if Braden Daniels, and frankly, both of them, if they're third string going into the season, Daniels ain't going to make the roster, and Stromberg is going to be, Stromberg's going to be inactive on game day. I mean, maybe Daniels makes the roster, but it's a lot of dudes to keep. So it's pretty fascinating. Third and fourth round pick. Those guys are that far down, but that's why you keep developing, why you keep trying to do the cross training, and why that depth is so important, because you got to work on it and develop your young players as well as getting them ready if you need them in case of an emergency. One of the most intriguing players, I think, on this roster is Antonio Gibson. Guy's a former 1,000-yard back. Super talented, super versatile. Seems to be a great fit in Eric Bieniemy's system. Yeah, they draft Chris Rodriguez. Brian Robinson obviously drafted last year. They got all these different receivers that are popping, and obviously the big three we all know are super capable of doing a lot of different things. So where does Antonio Gibson fit in the 2023 Commanders offense?
Oh, just continue to do what he's been doing. I mean, he really has come out and has really taken to what Eric's trying to, Coach Bieniemy's trying to get across to these guys on how to practice, how to prepare yourself, what's expected. That's the other thing that's been really good. And just watching him has been a treat this year, because you see that growth. And again, you to me, it's all trending in the right direction.
That's good. That's what you want this time of year. And last but not least, from Rivera from this morning, Deron Payne. How has he looked this offseason after the contract extension?
When Jonathan, same thing for Jonathan, has been the same thing for Terry. I mean, these guys, they haven't changed who they are, and that's the best thing about it. And that's what we're excited about, being able to take care of our own guys that come in and perform and do things the right way. We want to try and keep those guys around and do the best we can, and we were able to do that. And so, Deron's doing exactly what we believed he would be, and that is really just be the same guy and be who he is.
All right, obviously we'll have more from Rivera tomorrow, see who else speaks at the podium after practice. We, as I mentioned earlier, will be out there and are expecting to talk to either Quan Martin or Emmanuel Forbes. So we will have that one-on-one interview tomorrow here on the show. You missed any part of the show today, highly encourage you to use the rewind feature on the free Odyssey app or subscribe to the Hoffman Show podcast, and you can catch the show on your own time, anytime, anywhere, pretty much. Anthony, how long does it take you to get, like, hour one of the podcast? Is it already up?
It's been up.
Yeah.
Hour two is also up.
Yeah, so, like, within 20 minutes, typically, of the hour ending, the podcast is there?
Yes, sir.
So if you wanted to technically listen on delay, I think it's better for us, if I'm being totally honest, if I peel back the curtain, I think it's better for us if people listen to the rewind feature in the Odyssey app. I think we get some credit for that. I mean, obviously we get credit for the podcast. You know what? Do whatever's easiest for you. Just go ahead and whatever floats your boat. If you're a podcast person, I will say, like, if you get out of work at 5 and you want to try to catch up on the show, like, the podcast, you can listen at like 1.2 or 1.5 speed. I feel like I talk pretty fast already. I must be obnoxious if you listen in like 2x speed.
I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but maybe I should give it a try.
You should. I want you to just, for 5 minutes on the ride home,
I'll report back tomorrow.
Listen to me in 2x speed and see how terrible the show is. Hopefully it's not too bad. Just, I talk fast. The content's good, but it comes at you quick. All right, what do we got next? And we were going to do some. Our show's gotten a little bit jumbled today by a variety of factors. We can do the Bradley Beal discussion. We could zoom out on some other NBA adjacent topics. I'm kind of out of sound. We got all the things that I think were important. I say we do the Beal topic. Been having a lot of Bradley Beal conversations on Twitter.
I like it.
Let's bring it to the radio next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Real things, real people said in a real microphones coming up to end the show. And we got what do we got today coming up? We got any real doozies?
I'm still looking, but I do know we have what is his name? Jaren Jackson Jr.
Triple J, yeah.
He recalls when Draymond had called him, going into a sophomore year and told him that he should be declaring for the NBA draft. as opposed to coming back for his sophomore year. So
Interesting. He's a Michigan State guy, right?
Yeah, Michigan State too.
So he and Dre have that in common.
He was the year. So you remember when Michigan State went to the Final Four? They had a crazy run. I want to say it was 2019. They had lost to Texas Tech.
Oh, yeah.
So he was on the team before that year. So had he come back for his sophomore season, they probably would have won.
Yep. Is Izzo still mad at Draymond for that?
I don't know if he's mad, but, Draymond, I mean, he just recalls the story.
Okay, I'm always down for a good Draymond Green story.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. We still have JJ Redick and Perk yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
That one I know is pretty funny. So maybe we'll pull that one back out. All right. So one, I found a new camera angle on YouTube that allows me to be much more relaxed, and it feels like I'm in like a fireside chat situation. I just like slumped down on my chair but angled the camera so it doesn't look bad. Anthony, what do we make of like this? I just feel like welcome. This feels much more podcast than like radio.
Yeah, I think leaning back because you're comfortable. I feel like when you're sitting up, chest out, stomach in, you're definitely ready for the radio.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a podcast mood right now. Maybe it's because I only did 2 today. But I did multiple podcasts today. I was a guest. One of those that I was a guest on was the Wizards of Gallery Place, which is a phenomenal A-plus podcast name. So basically, Domo and I were going back and forth on Twitter, who's one of the co-hosts of that podcast. And we just have – the funny thing is, like, we have slightly differing views of Bradley Beal and his value. We do not have dramatically different views. We just see the market for him differently. And he thinks that the Wizards can and should get either a young player, like their version of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or multiple first-round picks back. And I think that's not a pipe dream, but I think that's wishful thinking. I think if you get either one of those, it's a home run deal because of multiple reasons. One, Bradley Beal is a very good player on an excellent contract. He's not the worst contract in the league, but that's kind of only because Ben Simmons is in the league. People like we were talking about Jordan Poole's contract. I think Poole's on a way better contract. It's like half the money, and he's 10 years younger. Do I think Jordan Poole has some issues as a player? Sure. Do I think Golden State's got some tough decisions to make? Yes. Do I think the value that he's got is as good as it was last year, coming off a great playoff run? No, but like it was one bad year followed by after one really good year. Rudy Gobert, not a good contract, but elite rim protector, has been more available than Beal has. He's been on a bunch of playoff teams. Bradley hasn't. Bradley's barely made the playoffs. So I just think it's a really, really, really bad contract. And it's long. There's 4 years left. And so unless you think Bradley Beal, who hasn't been healthy outside of the bubble year, the Russ year, the 2021 season, that was the most games he's played in a while. He played 60 games that year. But he still only played 60 games. So unless you think that all of a sudden for the first time since 2019 he's going to be healthy, you're talking about a guy who's going to play between 50 and 65 games, average not 30 anymore. It'd be great if he averaged 25. Last year I think was a concerning year in terms of his shot selection. He was way more efficient, but you need to be a volume scorer. That's why you got that contract. So he totally changed his game, and I realize some of that is because the Wizards asked him to. Really bizarre decision, in my opinion. And it's actually why I think there is a case to be made that letting Brad play out the first part of the season could up his value. If you can push him to score more and get him 27, 28 a game through the first half of the season, is he worth more at the trade deadline? 3.5 years left, 28-point per game scorer versus 4 years left, 23-point per game scorer. That's an interesting question. There is the risk that he's hurt at the trade deadline and you miss your window. But then the biggest factor that I think people forget is you can't just trade him anywhere. You can't just trade him, not just because the salary is hard for a lot of teams to absorb, but because he has the no trade clause. You can't ship him somewhere in the same way that, the Rockets, when they wanted to get Russell Westbrook from OKC, they sent Chris Paul to OKC, and there's nothing Chris Paul could do about it. You can't do that. You can't send Bradley Beal to Oklahoma City. You can't send him to Orlando. You can't send him to anywhere that he doesn't want to go. And so if he decides, I want to go to Philly, I want to go to Boston, I want to go to Miami, there's a deal that's in the works, and he doesn't go, hey, these 5 teams, that would be the best thing he could do is say, hey, I'm fine with any of these 5 teams. But unless he does that, he can veto any singular deal. And I think that if I'm the other team, why am I giving up more than I have to get the guy that's hopefully going to push me over the top? And so I think that is the hard thing for people to swallow, is because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, could you have gotten the Paul George return? Yeah, but it's not 2 or 3 years ago anymore. Teams have seen that kind of trade return is probably a mistake unless you're getting an elite player. It only works for Paul George if you're also getting Kawhi Leonard. It only works if you get Kevin Durant. It does not work for Rudy Gobert. And Beal's not thought of in the same way that he was, and he's more expensive. So, it's just going to be hard. And the last thing, I've talked about this before, but, this came up on the pod as well, and I, shout out to the Wizards of Gallery Place for having me on, and I'll retweet that link if people want to check it out, or you can just search in your favorite podcast app. But, the Philly thing, if I'm the Sixers, I know I have to sign Tyrese Maxey to a massive extension soon. I don't care. He's 22 years old. He's awesome. He's got an excellent mental makeup. He's not afraid of anything. He's a great pairing with Embiid. I think he's ready for more responsibility. And he averaged pretty close to what Beal did last year. Few less points, few less assists, but also fewer turnovers, and played 10 more games. So I just don't I guess my larger point, though, Anthony, is the value of trading Beal is that you get rid of him, not because he's a bad dude, not because he's a bad player, but because it gives you flexibility to start over. And that in itself is something you need to be oh, we got that in the trade. And that is something that doesn't look good on a trade, gets list of players graphic, but is the most important thing that would be acquired in a trade, unless somehow they can get a Tyrese Maxey or a whoever their version of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is from one of these teams.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from, and I agree to an extent. I don't think the Wizards have any type of leverage in these situations. One,
that's the point.
Exactly. One, Bradley Beal has the no trade clause, and then also two, his output isn't necessarily matching what he's already getting on paper, like the $50 million per year. So I hear where you're coming from, but my only question would be for you, if we were to, keep Brad, allow him to play the first, 20 games, up his scoring, up his, assist, rebound, up his numbers to, increase his value. How are we going to necessarily go about doing that if, say KP doesn't resign here, Kuz doesn't resign here? Now we're looking at, the Bradley Beal that was here in 2019 and 2020, where he's, forced to put the team on his back, where, he has the ball in his hand 90% of the time. I still don't think that will be a good recipe for, success if we went back to that model, just because I don't have the utmost faith in
that's kind of my point, right, is that keeping him is not an option. That's part of the leverage that is working against the Wizards. Mm-hmm. Keeping him is not an option. You can take the risk of having him play 35, 40 games, whatever it is, until the All-Star break, the trade deadline, or trade him in December, whatever you want to do. But there's a huge injury risk there. What if he's hurt? What if his numbers aren't better? Versus the certainty of we now have a plan, and whatever that plan means for Kuz, whatever that means for KP, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. That's the parts that I struggle with, is who do you keep, who do you not? But what I do know is that group together is not good enough to be competitive. And at that point, what's the point in keeping it together? Of course, you want to maximize your assets, but again, the flexibility is the most important thing, and we don't have any of it right now.
So I have a question. One more question.
Okay.
And I don't, want to say, our guy Wes Unseld isn't the guy for the job.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think coaching has anything to do with, us not producing as much as we should?
Of course. But it's not just coaching on Wes, it's coaching on the entire organization. Like, Tommy was definitely in part behind, like the front office was definitely in part behind Beal moving on the ball last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Tommy was the one who was talking about all that stuff.
Okay.
And then Tommy, after the season, was like, yeah, we got to move Brad off the ball. And then Tommy got fired. So do I think that how you use a player matters? Yeah, that's a huge deal. I think the player development here has been a nightmare. That's part of the reason why they're bringing in all these new people and why Alex McLean got let go. There's a lot of issues in this organization. I think they've done a really good job of addressing a lot of them. But it all points to getting rid of all of the things that were here prior. And I made this point on the podcast today, and I want to reiterate it again here, and I made it on Twitter and the whole deal. There's a chance, I would say a high likelihood, that if Beal goes to Miami or Philadelphia or Boston, he's going to be really good. And that's going to hurt. You're going to go, why couldn't they get that here? And I think you have to push that negative feeling to the side and realize it was never going to happen here. There was no way to acquire the type of player to play with him that will put him in his best position. That's the unfortunate financial situation this team is in. And that's why Michael Winger is here, and he's going to have to work his way out of that with Will Dawkins and Travis Schlenk, and whether it's via the draft or whoever they can find a scouting front young player that they think is being misused or underutilized or undervalued by another team. Can they get a steal and get a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, get one of these young guys who emerges as part of a trade? That would be ideal. Or pick up an extra pick and be able to move around in the draft and get the right guy there. I don't have a lot of file on the draft guys yet, so I don't know who that could be in this draft that could potentially fall to 8 or to another place that they're able to move up to. But it's why I do think that a 3-team deal could be the best possible outcome for them. I think they could possibly, move Beal somewhere. Like my favorite one that I think is super duper intriguing is like the Jaylen Brown to Portland, Beal to Boston, Anthony Simons, and number 3 overall here, and then like number 8 goes to Portland, I guess, in that deal, or to Boston, however the deal works. Like, that's super intriguing. It feels like the Wizards are getting away with one there, but if the Blazers are getting Jaylen Brown, do they feel like it's worth the number 3 pick in Simons? That could be a question. That to me is a more valid question than like, is the number 3 pick in Simons worth it for Beal? Because I don't think that is. But that's not at that point. That's not the Blazers' problem. So, and also that takes away the no trade thing because Brad's not going to Portland. So there's that. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We will wrap up this radio show next with real things, real people said into real microphones.
Here's
the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/at the Team 980. All right, tomorrow, lots of good stuff. It's a Wednesday, so we do never read the comments. Bunch of stuff up on youtube.com/at Craig Hoffman. You all right, Ant? Did you just get attacked by? Did you just get an itch?
Yeah, it was a mean one.
Yeah. You just all of a sudden became like a contortionist.
I'm good now.
All right, that's good. I was nervous there for a second. We got Never Read the Comments tomorrow. We got our interview with either Quan Martin or Emmanuel Forbes. Tom Haberstroh talking NBA Finals tomorrow. Old buddy, used to work for ESPN.com. Now works for Meadowlark Media on Dan Le Batard's show with his network of stuff. So really excited to have Tom on. I haven't talked to him in way too long. Anything else we got tomorrow, Ant? More from Rivera?
I think you've covered all bases.
Okay. I think that means it's time. It's time to see what real things, real people said into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, we've had a lot of good stuff over the past year from First Take, just a king of content when it comes to real things type of sound bites. Like, wow, can you believe that guy said that? JJ Redick's been a frequent contributor when he's been on the show. Never quite like this, though. This was from yesterday's First Take. Something just seemed to go horribly wrong in a segment with JJ, Stephen A, and Big Ol' Perk.
This is not the first time a team has tried to make Nikola Jokic a score. This is not the first time a team has been more physical with Jamal Murray and tried to disrupt their two-man action. For as well as the Nuggets have played at times, Perk, is that you moaning in my ear over and over again?
Yeah, I know. I was getting ready to ask you. You sound like you got sleep apnea, Perk.
Okay?
What, you all right?
Are you okay?
Yeah, that's me. It's
okay.
It's not
Are you
moaning.
intentionally?
It's
Are you
not
intentionally
moaning.
trying
It's
to?
being disgusted.
Oh
yes,
my
I am.
God. It's a gross noise, man. It's a gross noise.
Keep going. That's all right.
I'm just saying that's very disrespectful. You don't have to sound like you got sleep apnea on live television. You could disguise it a little bit.
Fine.
I mean, that's very
fine.
live television.
That's fine.
Okay.
Hey, look, I came on here already knowing. I already knew that the peanut gallery was gonna be against Big Perk anyway. I came on here ready for the smoke. So that's fine. You and JJ could team up. I'm ready. I'm sitting right here. I'm not going nowhere. I came into this world one deep, and I'm gonna come on first.
All right, well then let him finish. Just let him finish that. Just let it. You the one with 1 foot in the grave and another foot on a banana peel. So let him finish.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Hold on. What? 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel? Now, Stephen A, you said a lot of stuff, but I don't know what that means.
I'm crying, dog.
I gotta say, I would replay the as Stephen A calls it, the sleep apnea noise at the beginning, but that felt gross in my headphones. And I'm wearing like radio headphones, not an inner earpiece like JJ and Stephen A were. Ugh. No. Bad Kendrick Perkins. Bad Perk. That's why the segment exists. Jaren Jackson Jr. calling or telling a great Draymond Green story. I gotta hit play on this quickly, otherwise we're running out of time.
Stuff like that. And then when I was about to leave school, I didn't read draft boards just because it kind of threw me off, and I just honestly really didn't look. And I like was gonna come back to school, and I was signing up for everything, classes, everything next year. And then he called me. Izzo had him call me, and he was just like, I had never even met this dude for real. Like, he calls me, he's like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, how high do you want to go? Like, I'm like, bro, what? Who is this guy? Like, it's just and that's just how it is. Like, if you go to that school, like, it's just an automatic family. There's nothing to like ease into. Like, everybody's just talks to each other the same way. Everybody's been through the same process.
Draymond seems like a good dude to have in your corner.
A nice little mentor.
Yeah, whether you want him or not. Which is probably why like Jordan Poole hates it. Wait, did I just figure out the Draymond Jordan Poole thing? Didn't Jordan Poole go to Michigan?
He did.
Didn't we just solve, Anthony, we just solved the year's worth of Warriors mysteries.
You might be on to something, correct?
Detective over here. All right, tomorrow, Commanders rookie DB. Never read the comments. See you.